This is Bean to Barstool, a podcast that looks at the intersections of craft chocolate, craft beer, and other artisan drinks. My name is David Nilsen. I'm a professional drinks writer, an advanced cicerone, the author of Pairing Beer and Chocolate, and the creator and host of this show. The music for this episode is by my dear friend, indie folk musician Anna P.S. You can find out more about Anna's music in the show notes or on annapsmusic.com. You can find links and information about our guests in the show notes as well. I hope you enjoy this episode of Bean to Barstool. Hey everyone, welcome back to our Media Relations for Craft Chocolate Makers series. I've been a full-time food and beverage journalist for about a decade now, and my wife and business partner, Melinda Guerra, has been a freelance PR professional helping brands tell their stories and connect with media for even longer than that. And in this series, we've been sharing what we've learned over our careers to help craft chocolate companies of any size identify their stories, communicate them to media members and outlets, gain new customers, and keep the ones you have curious. In part one, we talked about why media relations is so important no matter the size of your chocolate business and why you need to have a strategy for this. In part two, we talked about making a story list. And in part three, we talked about how to begin building a media list. All of those are currently available to listen to, and there are corresponding blog posts on the site for each of those as well. In this episode, we're going to talk all about press releases, what they are, when to send them, to whom to send them, what to include, and just as important, the inverse of all those, when not to send them, what not to include. Everything you have wondered about press releases, and if we miss anything, please email or comment and let me know, and I'll make sure we address your questions on air. Making and sending a press release can feel scary if it's not something you do all the time. It can feel like filing taxes or turning in an application, and if you don't do it exactly right, you'll be in trouble or something. They don't have to be scary, and as we'll learn, they don't have to be all that often either. A press release sounds super official, so it sounds like something real professionals do, but as we'll discuss, there are pretty specific times to send these, and the rest of the time they may not be necessary. Back with me for this episode is Melinda Guerra, my life and business partner, who has been doing freelance PR for 15 years. All of the info in this episode will also be going into a blog post on the Bean to Barstool website as well, and it will have visual examples and things like that so you can follow step by step. At the outset, Melinda shares when you should send a press release. Okay, so when do people need to send a press release?
I'm going to suggest that people do those definitely for events to get the word out about that and have all of that information together in one spot. The other time that I have people do that is to get out information about a company or product. I like for people to do that even if it might not necessarily get picked up to run immediately in media, because press releases like that, once you distribute them, you can also have a dedicated page on your website to hold them. And I know that folks like to be able to use that historically to see when such and such product got distributed or when a company started. And so having that information in a set spot on your press releases is helpful. So have them use it for those kinds of informational things, but definitely doing it for events. And the reason that I'm doing that with events, with having this formal communication, is because I want to have all of the details together in one clear, concise spot where a producer or an editor can grab and easily access all of that information together instead of having to scroll through some more informal correspondence in an email. But even when I'm sending out these events press releases, I'm still putting a personal informal note at the top the first time that I tell the media about the event. And that's because otherwise you're just getting blasted with a very generic, detailed event that they don't have a reason to pay attention to. So I'm still going to say, hey, Carrie, this is in an area that you cover, and I really think that this is why it would grab your attention. Happy to connect you with more details. And then I'm putting that body underneath that. So this way they have a reason to care about what it is that I'm sending underneath.
So it sounds like you're sending press releases specifically when there is some kind of call to action or specific thing that you're looking for. So an event, a product release, something like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I am not just sending them generically because I think that they are easy for people to ignore if there's not a real reason to pay attention to. So there does have to be some specific thing that I want for media to do with this information.
Who are you sending these to, and who do you specifically not send these to?
Yeah, so I am sending these press releases to my TV and newspaper generally. So those are going to go to the generic news desk or tips at email addresses, and then to producers that I've maybe worked with or researched their beat, and I know that they cover something like that. I'm also sending them to online publications. Sometimes with those, there's a submission form or a specific email address for those press releases. And so they can take a little bit more legwork to make sure that I'm doing that in the way that they want to be receiving this kind of information. But I am generally sending that to specifically who is interested in covering this kind of event. Part of, and I think that this goes to your point about you just getting bombarded by emails and press releases from folks. Part of what I have learned in working with my own media relationships is that I need for my contacts to continue to open up emails that they get from me. And the way that I do that is not just including that same list of people on every single thing that I send out. So I'm absolutely looking for, if an event is in Chicago, I'm not just sending that to my full, national list that only covers things that are local to Dayton or something, right? Like I want to make sure that something is relevant to these people, and it builds that trust. They open my emails and they respond to them that way.
So it sounds like you're primarily sending press releases to the legacy media that we had talked about. Those are the places that are primarily going to be covering this type of, I don't want to say breaking news, but like time sensitive news.
Largely for who I work with. Yeah, that's absolutely true.
I think it's really important to make sure that you are paying attention to a writer's beat. We had talked about in the last episode on building a media list, making sure that you are making note of when you're working with a specific media member, not just a broad outlet, that you know the kinds of stories they cover and what their beat is. I get so many completely spurious press releases. It can be okay to send press releases that might be kind of broad for a writer. I get some things that are about aspects of food and beverage that I don't cover all the time. It's not out of the question that I would, but I get some where clearly, whether it's a business or a press agent, has downloaded a database of press emails and has just like sent this to literally everybody, and I mark those as spam and I block them because you're wasting my time and you're not doing your clients any favors.
We'll be right back.
Thinking of crafting a new beer, or maybe giving your next small batch a flavor twist? Let's talk bold flavors, exotic origins, and ingredients you can truly trust. Cocoa Supply brings you premium cacao nibs, husks, and pulp straight from small farms in Ecuador. No middlemen, just pure craft potential. Roast nibs into a rich stout, swirl cacao pulp into a tangy sour, or add earthy, woody notes with cacao husks. Every ingredient adds layers of flavor, aroma, and story. Ethically sourced, top quality, and delivered with care. Brewers, roasters, and chocolate makers worldwide rely on Cocoa Supply. What are you waiting for? Visit cocosupply.com and start brewing with intention.
Yeah, and I think that that's a frustrated point that I hear from journalists a lot, right? Is that this is the relationship that my people, the publicists, have cultivated with your people. Sometimes there can be a pressure with some clients to make sure that you are hitting absolutely everybody with this. And how many people did you send this to? Like my having sent this to 100 people is completely useless to you if none of them are relevant to the information, to the event. So choosing that group of people who I can actually give information to that it matters so that I'm not getting your company blocked, like that's actually the most beneficial for things like this. And I think that that just, it takes a little bit more time to pay attention, but that comes across and lets you build relationships and have a two-way working relationship.
I think it might be beneficial since we're talking specifically to craft chocolate makers or company owners within the industry who are not doing press releases all the time to understand how these actually get used. So, take us around the other side of that relationship when somebody at a TV station or newspaper gets a press release. What does this actually do for them and how are they using it?
For these events, what they're doing, TV planning has meetings that these folks will have once a week to kind of outline what are we doing with our week and how are we fitting in these stories. And then every morning they sit down again to go through, okay, what's breaking news? What do we have to move things around? Who do we have to make time for? What have we just found out about? You know, this news piece here that's going to impact something else. So they're doing that planning broadly, you know, over the course of a week or sometimes even 2 weeks, and then coming back to that once a day or sometimes more often to kind of zero in on what for sure are they doing. Newspapers are doing that similarly. Sometimes newspapers and online media will have event calendars, and so these special events that we're sending via press releases will pop up on, hey, here's what's going on in your community. And that can be a really helpful way to reach folks that aren't necessarily aware of your company. They are getting the news, you know, from these community sources. And so you're really coming up in one of those two spaces, whether they're using this to look at their broader planning or for what goes into those calendars. And then as far as like how it gets used with the product and promotion that we were talking about earlier, they use that kind of information to research for when pieces are being done later on a company. So if I am pitching a company to media and can link to, hey, here are some proof that like they have existed for some period of time and some previous releases that they've got that kind of establish some of that history. That's another area that these are getting used in. But you know, I know that we talked about that being the other part that we're going to so that you're going to look at later with this ongoing relationship, but really with events, it's going in that TV planning and on those online calendars.
So now that we understand a little bit of what is worth making a press release for and who we're sending that to, let's talk about how to actually put one together. You talked about the importance of making these individual communications. Talk a little bit about not only the importance of that, but some examples of how they can do that in an efficient way.
Yeah, so I keep a list, like when we were talking about putting together these media lists where we're noting who are the specific names of these writers and these producers and editors who we're sending things to. The reason that I'm noting people's first names and not just their role, like this is an editor here, this is a producer there, is because I'm specifically addressing things that way. So if I am getting ready to send something to Pam, I am going to just include a private personal message to her. The same press release information is going underneath that private message in that email, but being able to say like, hey, Pam, here's why this might be of interest to you. I know that you've covered this group before, or I know that you really are into local ingredients. So thought about you with this event that's coming up that's going to be focused on all local ingredients. Would love to connect for more details. And so having that just like 2 sentences there helps a lot. And what it signals on the other side is specifically what you said, that I haven't just downloaded a list of 200 emails off of a website, but I know that this is going to Pam, and I've taken that extra 30 seconds to write a 2 sentence email. And honestly, it can be some of the same stuff. You just have to like personalize it with people's names at the beginning, right? But like, hey, Susan, I know that you cover this region and thought that it might be up your alley, and have that just like personal note. Make sure that you're using the right people's names, right? Like don't get too quick with this that you're mixing that stuff up, but it catches people's attention and makes them actually engage with your information, and says like, I've taken the time to know who you are before I'm sending this. And it, I think, encourages an environment for the person receiving this email then to take the time to read this and respond accordingly.
Yeah, I think it, for me as a journalist, it confirms to me when a person has done even a cursory amount of research on my work, to include a sentence or something at the beginning, whether it's, hey, I saw this recent story you wrote or something along those lines. It does let me know that I was not just ripped off of a spreadsheet of emails. Are you familiar with the Van Halen test?
I am not, no.
So fans of This American Life might remember an episode from maybe 10 or 15 years ago where they were talking about the Van Halen test. And this was named after the rock band Van Halen. In the 1980s, when they were at the height of their fame, they had really, really elaborate concerts with lots of lighting and electrical needs and really complicated stages and everything else. And so in their tour rider, which is basically the contract that every venue signs to agree to have, everything that the band needs ready to go, they would include that in their dressing room, they needed a bowl of M&Ms from which all of the brown M&Ms had been removed. And this got out, and for a while it was like, oh my God, they're prima donnas. Like, what do they have against this one type of M&M? This is so dumb. Reality was they put that in there because if they went into their dressing room and saw that the brown M&Ms were still in the bowl, they knew the venue had not paid attention to the rider completely, and they could expect problems. When I get a sentence at the beginning of an email that is somewhat personalized, I don't have the illusion that this person is a diehard fan of mine and that they were dying to communicate with me about whatever that one sentence is. I don't get, like, this isn't about warm and fuzzies. It is an indication that a human did this, and a human recognized that I was a different human from the other however many people on their list that they're sending. It doesn't guarantee anything, but it strips away that suspicion that this was just a completely spurious spamming out to everybody on a media list. It's less about the actual content of that personalization than the fact that it indicates that some amount of effort was put into that. So let's talk about what else needs to be included in a press release before we even look at the actual content of what it's about. What do you need to make sure is in there?
We'll be right back.
Hey everyone, Final Gravity issue 12 is now available in the Bean to Barstool shop. This new issue of our zine, telling personal, human-centered stories from the world of beer, is full of great articles, including Miranda Moore's article about the cultural connotations in South Africa of Carling Black Label Lager, or Brett Cordelletti's profile of the Palestinian brewery Teba, among many others. We believe passionately about this project, and we'd love for you to check it out. You can order individual copies or subscribe on beantobarstool.com. We also now have taproom level subscriptions, so breweries can get a discount on ordering multiple copies of each issue, or you can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/beantobarstoolzines. You can also check out our new website for Final Gravity at finalgravityzine.com. Cheers.
Contact name, title, email, and phone number. It feels silly to have to say that, but I have in some of my roles, I am the person who is receiving press releases, and it's amazing how many of them just don't have that info. Sometimes press releases are getting printed and handed to a reporter, like in a book that they are taking with them for a day. So the fact that you have all of that information somewhere else in your email signature line, but you if you attach an actual press release document, you have to put it there again because you want to make it easy for people to be able to reach you. So contact, name, title, email, phone. So for me, that is obviously my name, and then generally that I am communications for X company, email address and phone number. We talked about this in the last episode. I'm a millennial. I do not love talking on the phone, but when I'm sending out a press release, I am not going to assume that the person who is receiving it, who I want to cover my event, has the time to write back an email and exchange, clarify any questions that they have and all of that stuff. For a lot of these folks, they're going to pick up the phone, ask their questions, and if I'm not there on the other side of that phone to answer it, sometimes this is meaning that I'm losing a story. My information is all there. The company name, for sure, you want to make sure that that's at the top and not buried somewhere in there. And then a really succinct messaging. Ideally, I'm putting in the headline or subheadline or the opening lines, like, here is what the event is and how you can get involved. So grand opening of new bean to bar chocolate shop downtown Saturday, right? Like all of that information is right there. And I'm going to get into the information about like what makes this place unique and later, all of that. But knowing right at the beginning that this is what's coming and why you should be interested. With that media contact, and generally that's me, I am the media contact, it's important to have a real email address. So I am giving people my personal email address, or depending on the client, sometimes I have an email address at that client's URL, just something that you check. I did run into an issue with a client recently where we were a partner of an event that was being announced, and the partner company had kind of handled doing the outreach and then had sent people with questions to our info at email. And I came to find out that that was happening, because I would never have let an info at email address go out into media, but B, that info at email address only got checked every 2 or 3 days, which generally for my client was a very reasonable time frame for this kind of communication, where media was deciding whether or not to cover us, whether or not to include our quotes in a piece, whether or not to engage with this information that was being sent. Like 2 to 3 days was, the story was over and done in that time frame. So making sure that it is an email address that gets checked. And then similarly with the phone, I years ago put my phone on silent. Like my phone does not ring unless I have just sent out a press release. So once I have sent out a release, my do not disturb gets turned off, and my phone rings, and I get text message notifications, and I get like immediate notifications when I have an email. All of that stuff for probably about 72 hours, I have to make myself available, because you've put in the work, you've sent the information out, you've found the right people. What a shame to lose out on something because you just weren't available when they reached out.
Yeah, I think it can be easy, especially if you're not somebody who works in PR. If this is a business owner or employee, you've done all this effort to create a press release that is not your normal work. This probably had some trepidation and frustration around it. You get the press release formatted and you send it out, and you want to take a big sigh of relief and just kind of be done with this now. The press release is not the media coverage. The press release is to get the media coverage. You aren't done yet. You've accomplished a major task, but you can't just abandon the task at that point, or otherwise it was wasted. You have to be available to get that response. And to reiterate, from the perspective of a journalist, I don't consider info at emails to be valid contacts functionally. If that's the only thing I have for a company, I don't consider myself to have an actual contact for that company. That might be an absolute last resort. So when I see an info at or a hello at, if it is not time sensitive at all and that's all I have, I will email that. But do not be afraid to use your personal work email for this. That's why you have it. I understand not wanting that email address just out there for everybody to take, but especially in a press release like this, where you're sending it directly to media, include an actual human being's email address so they know there is a person who is going to get that. And it's not just going to be diffused responsibility between the 10 people who have access to that email address. So let's talk about how to actually format the press release. What do they need to put together and in what order?
Yeah, so again, we talked about making sure that we have that contact info at the top, the name, title, phone, email address, the company name, and then having that title and subtitle for why I want for people to pay attention, just that quick snapshot of what's happening. A photo, if I'm using one, and sometimes people just want to kind of treat this like Facebook with a pick for the algorithm. Don't do that, right? But if there has been a ribbon cutting, or if there's a new product that's being announced and it's got really pretty packaging, or it's got like a great design on that, I'll include just one photo that is not massive and going to blow up, get stuck in like filters and all of that, but just one photo that just says, hey, this is pretty and we care, right? So a photo, if I'm using one, and then only if it's an event that the city, like people do that dateline with, hey, this is, specific to tiny suburb in wherever. And press releases don't have to be formatted that way, but also for some of these national publications or some of these like broader publications, they want to make sure that the event that you're sending them information about is actually in an area that they cover. So if I'm doing this to Chicago, I'm going to say Chicago at the beginning, or Dayton at the beginning, or something like that, that just signals, yes, I do actually know that this is a thing that is relevant to you by region. And then underneath that, I'm doing the actual press release. So if it's an event, I'm including the what, when, where, and why, what the event is, when it's happening, where, like a specific actual location for it, or address or intersection, and why. If you're sending to TV media, it's really important that you include where media trucks can park, because TV producers don't want to risk having to waste time driving around a block. So if gate 40 is where security takes care of media trucks, or there is a cordoned off area, and if you tell security that you're on the approved media list, they'll let you in, like whatever like that, make sure that you communicate to them, A, because it's helpful, but B, because it establishes that you've done the work and you're not going to just tell media that like it's first come first serve on parking, but you're actually making sure that, say, their camera crews can get to where they need to go without having to like drag their dollies through like mud or over hills or whatever. And then I'm also giving the on-site contact. There are some events that I set up, so I am the person who is sending out the information, and I will answer any questions that they have and connect them with people and line up interviews, but I'm not necessarily going to be there at the event. So I always have a big, bold, like on-site contact. And if it's me, it is again my name and my phone number. If it's not me, it is the name and phone number of the person that they should contact there. And again, has to be somebody who actually is going to be answering every call and responding to every message. So if you are doing an event, it's important that that is not the head of the company or the person who's actually going to be speaking, because if somebody is calling them, they will obviously have their phone on silent when they are meeting the VIPs or talking with the people who are going to be like also speaking or handling the ribbon cutting. So assistants are great for this to assist. And you have to have somebody who's actually going to be able to answer the phones. And then why the event matters. So this is, for this new product, for this groundbreaking, for a new building that's being built, historically accurate about something, or in an area that has really been needing to have this type of business coming here, or whatever that. And I know that this is going to differ by industry, but whatever is that, here's why the event matters, here's why you should care, making sure that that's in there. So that's all event specific. If it's a product, it's going to be really similar. Who is putting it out? What is it? Why? I like to do maybe 3 to 4 short paragraphs and include a quote or two in there. And that's just because with these kind of product releases, sometimes online papers in particular need to fill space. And so they will sometimes just take my releases and print them exactly as they are. So sure, now my president of my company has this story about this new product and it has a quote from them on this actual site as well. So, and if you're doing a product, make sure that you include the actual name of the product and what it is and how folks can purchase it. Again, that's something that seems really basic, but if you're not used to writing press releases, those are things that are really easy to leave off. I have gotten, again, press releases that I have read through and I get to the end and I literally do not know if the product is something that goes in my hair, if it's something that I consume, if it's a pill of some kind, if it is a leave-in conditioner, if it is a spray. Like, I know that it's life-changing and that it's organic and that it's like brand new technology, but I don't know what it is, right? So telling people, making sure that you're actually effectively communicating with that information and how to purchase it, which can be as simple as at your website or at store locations, and then tell us what the location is, but make it easy. With a product, you're wanting to give people the next steps that they need to be able to purchase that product or to access it, to engage with it. So making sure that you include that information. Photos are a thing that people go back and forth on. For me, usually what I'm doing is I'm including a Dropbox link to more photos, and I do Dropbox instead of like Google because it is a lot easier to control those permissions on there and to make sure that you are actually giving people the ability to not only access, but also to download and not to accidentally like move photos out of that folder and into something else. So just make sure that you're reading your permissions carefully. But if it is something that where photos are appropriate, I don't want to be sending media email 1 of 4 because I can only attach like 3 or 4 photos at a time. I'm putting that in a folder that's easy for them to access. And then at the bottom, I do a boilerplate about the company. And this is another one of those areas that I think can stress people out because they think it has to be like you have to pay somebody a ton of money to put together a perfect boilerplate. But it's your boilerplate is really your about section that just explains who you are. So company X has been producing craft chocolate in Northwest Minnesota. They're committed to sustainable practices. They donate a portion of their profits to their partner nonprofit who provides resources for cacao farmers at their partner farm in Honduras. For more information about Company X, visit companyx.com. Like just something that establishes who you are. And if you are wanting for people to like just have that baseline understanding of what the company is and what's the website if I want more information, having that at the bottom of all of these releases that you send out is important for people. So because going through that's all a lot of information, I'm going to use bolding when I send this email out. So I'm going to make sure that I'm bolding the name of the company the first time that it's used, the name of the product the first time that it's used, the name of the spokesperson, like if I'm quoting my company president or something like that, like just so that people can see at a glance, here is the who, what, where, when, why, or here is the name of person, name of company, name of product, and make it easy for people to understand the information that they're engaging with. And then with that, so you've got like, that's all the information that you are actually including, looking at things to not include with that. The flowery language that people refer to as PR speak gets annoying, I think, for everybody. So assuming that people are busy and that all of that like big, bold language and flowery stuff that they have to sift through is just obstacles to get them to get to your actual point. So again, like there is a client that I am in charge of getting that client on the news. In order to do that, I have to work with a whole bunch of their different vendors. And so get these vendors on the news talking about this particular client. When those vendors are sending me press releases, they are telling me that their product is transforming the industry, that it has 6 organic properties, that it's healthy, that it's great for everyone, but they aren't telling me what it actually is. And I'm bored reading this information. I'm getting increasingly frustrated because I don't even know what it is. So I am just putting those press releases to the side and I'm paying attention to the ones that actually communicate. So inevitably, who I end up using for segments that I can pitch to the media are the people who have given me the clear information. They've explained what the product is, explained how you use it, given me like this clear info without all of the like flowery language that I have to comb through. And so making sure that I have that information, have it clear and concise is really important. And also obviously that I know who to contact if I have questions, right? Like making sure that all of that specific information, keep it fun. Like it doesn't have to be boring, but your language shouldn't be getting in the way of people understanding your actual point. And I know that it's a major issue for both of us. We both care deeply about this, making sure that you're not including AI. So specifically things that shouldn't be included in your press releases or in anything you're ever putting out about your company is AI, because like it just if you're not caring enough to put the time in yourself, it's going to be hard for somebody else to care. And also, and I don't remember if I talked about this in one of the previous sessions, but with email filters now, they are sometimes tagging photos or language as, hey, this was potentially generated by AI. And so when I'm seeing that, I am getting flagged that, this company doesn't care as much. And so I'm investing in that less. I'm seeing media do the same thing because ultimately you're working in a creative industry. So don't include flowery language that gets in the way of people actually getting to your point, and don't include AI. It's a waste of everyone's time.
Yeah, to your point on avoiding flowery language, when I get that in a press release, assuming that it's about something I am interested in potentially covering, at best, that kind of language is useless. Like at best, it's something I can ignore to get to what I actually need because, and especially for me as a freelance writer, this might be a little bit different in some cases with somebody who is just writing a like quick news story or doing this on air and maybe reading some of the direct stuff from the press release. But for me, I can't use really anything that's in the press release in my text. I'm going to be writing my own article. So I don't need what you send me to already have employed creative writing. I mean, if you write good sentences, great, but like you don't need to put extra effort into making this poetic. You just need to tell me what it is and why it's interesting. And then I will be writing that article. I think sometimes when this happens a lot with the quotes that you were talking about. So when I get press releases from companies that are big enough where, okay, we're going to include a couple quotes from our president who is clearly media trained or fancies themselves media trained. And it is those kind of throwaway statements that we talked about a couple episodes ago, where it was like, we have the world's greatest fans, or we're really working with the best ingredients in the world, or we're making the best whatever. And I'm glad you believe that, but like that doesn't tell me absolutely anything. So make sure that everything you're including in here actually carries its own weight and isn't wasting my time and wasting the space you had to actually say something in.
Yeah.
Also, and I think this is especially true for artisan food and drink businesses like we're talking about here with craft chocolate, avoid industry speak if you are sending this to a media member or outlet that is not specifically covering your industry. So, insider language, phrases that we all know the meaning of if we work in the industry, but have only taken on that meaning within the industry. Talking about ingredients that maybe not everybody is familiar with as though everybody were familiar with them. If you're sending this to local TV, they probably don't know anything about craft chocolate. So anything you put in there either needs to be succinctly explained or just omitted if it's going to be something that their eyes are going to pass right over because they don't even know what it means. And they assume it's going to then probably be too complicated for the audience as well. So you talked about photos and visuals and things like that. Let's get into a little bit more detail on when and what they should include, because I think you alluded to there being some disagreement on this. I think the tendency is to overload visuals in a press release. So what should they include? What are the guidelines there for when this actually carries its weight?
If I'm doing an event and the event has a graphic for it or a flyer or something that's been designed, I'm going to go ahead and include that event graphic or a product shot, something with that next nice visual. If there is some reason that I'm pitching an actual person, as part of this press release, then I might include their headshot, but I'm just doing one image. And that image that I insert, like in Gmail, when you're inserting those images, you can keep original resolution. And generally, my resolution on these is like way too big. So I just say like best fit or something small. Like I'm doing a smaller picture. You don't want to send something grainy, but something that is just a visual component is going to be what I'm including in the body, but then that link to the Dropbox with more photos is important there. So if I am say that this is about a new product that you've got that's coming out, you can include the packaging, because sometimes this packaging, I love the craft chocolate industry because the packaging I think is just so compelling and one of my favorite parts. And so you can actually lay out like, here's the exterior, here's the product mold with this imprint on it. If it's the kind of event where you're having a specific flyer that has more information, then having that attached or, in that Dropbox as a high res image so that people can access and use that. If it's an event that's been done before, so if we are doing an annual event that I'm inviting you to, and I am working with TV media in particular, they're interested in what's called B-roll. If they're going to be doing an interview of some kind and they can, share a little bit about the event on air, but maybe can't necessarily send a camera person out to cover it, we still want the coverage, but they need to have something visual to go along with it. So if you have photos of previous events at the times that this event has been done, or some clips of people, like some short video clips of people having fun at your event, or things like that, that here's just some prior B-roll, then they can grab from that and it can make it easier for them to include those pieces. And a lot of times, if they can't send out a camera crew, and sometimes these kind of fun stories, these fun events are the first thing that gets cut if something serious is happening in the news. So having a folder where I've given them already, here's some video and some photo so they can find a way to still run it and use that imagery can be really helpful as well. Media kits are a thing that I think people hear about and say, that's great. We should definitely put a media kit on our website, and don't really have an idea of how to utilize well. Media kits can be really helpful. Helpful media kits are going to include professional bios and headshots of your key team members, a history of the company, some professional product shots, that company boilerplate that we talked about, and a high res company logo. Make sure that that has your accurate website and social media handles, your contact people, names, titles, emails, and phone. Again, it's basically like it can just live on in a folder, but you want for a journalist or a publicist who you have hired to do an event, somebody who is interested in getting news coverage about your company, you want for them to have one spot to actually have all of the information that they need. So photos and bios and history and the language that I should use when talking about your company, and make sure that you keep that up to date.
And understand that the reason for having a media kit, this comes with the understanding that media is going to use this. So anything you're including in there is something that you should be prepared to be on air or be in print. That can include providing attribution for your photography if relevant. Now, if your company owns the photos outright or they're just attributed to your company, then that's not really important. But if your policy is to credit the photographer, or you have a contract with a photographer who has stipulated that or whatever, make sure you have that kind of information in there as well.
A lot of times, if I'm sending something out to media for coverage, even if they are getting from me and I've told them that I am to handle communications for such and such company, they are still not assuming that that company is who holds the media rights to that. So they still want to have in writing from me on behalf of the company, yes, you can attribute all photos or all photos and videos to company name. They want that explicitly stated. So I forget about that sometimes when I'm walking people through this kind of information, but that's a really good point.
So once they've actually written their press release, they've gotten their visual assets together and they're ready to send these, how does that actually happen? Do they put this directly into the body of an email? Are they attaching an outside document? What are they doing?
Usually, I am putting this directly into the body of an email, the actual press release itself, and up at the top is where I'm putting my little like private note. So if I know that I'm sending this to David, I'm going to send the information, give David a little heads up about this event, probably at least once, like leading up to it, hey, I've got an event coming up this summer. It's going to be this release. I'm really excited about it, and I think it's up your alley. Like, we'll connect about that later. So I want to have, done the work to let my people know that this is going to be coming out. And what that does for me is it gives me the flexibility when I am now at that day where I'm getting ready we've finally gotten everything lined up. The event is coming up in 2 weeks or in 10 days or whatever that is. If I've already sent out those private personal messages to let people know that this event is coming up and I'm going to be sending you more information about it, then I can send out the actual press release as one press release to everyone that I've told that this is coming their way. What's really important to do when you do that is to use that BCC line, because as a general rule, media folks do not want to be seeing that they are one of 76 people that you are sending this exact same thing to. And some of that goes back to, David, what you brought up earlier about diffused responsibility. And that doesn't have to be within the same organization. It can just be like, oh, this is going to, all 8 news stations and our 10 papers in our area. Like, I'm sure somebody else will pick it up, and people want to have something that is exciting and unique and all of that stuff. And so I send emails from me to me, and I'm putting everybody else's actual email addresses on that BCC. People ask me sometimes, like, which one is it that I'm supposed to use? Is it the CC or is it the BCC? Because we have gotten so far away from where those terms came up. So just a quick reminder, your CC is your carbon copy. That is someone that I am copying on this email, and anyone who's receiving this can see this is who it came from, this is who it went to directly, and this is who was CC'd on that. I am rarely ever doing a CC. Your BCC is a blind carbon copy. So the person who is getting this email address, they have no idea who else is getting blind carbon copied on there. So if I'm, again, wanting to send this mass and not wanting everyone to know everyone else who got it, that's when I'm utilizing this line. So generally, I'm doing this in the body of an email. The only time that I am including an attachment as the press release is if there is something specific to that formatting that I want to make sure doesn't get kind of screwed up. If people are looking at it on their email, then I might include it as a PDF attachment or as a Word attachment or something like that. But as a general rule, I am sending it in the body of the email. And the reason is, and we keep on coming back to this, you want to reduce the obstacles that are between your story and the media covering it, right? So if they're now having to open up this email and now having to open up an attachment to even see what the email is about, like you're adding in an extra step forward. I want them to see from the subject line that they want to open this email and then be able to see immediately at the top of the email why they want to keep reading and, go on from there. So I want to remove any obstacles they would have to cover in my story.
Journalism, like any other industry, including craft chocolate, has a lot of its own industry language of terms and phrases that we use within the industry that don't mean the same thing or don't mean anything outside of it. One of those terms in journalism is the embargo. I did not go to journalism school. So when I started freelance writing, I found out what embargoes were because somebody used it in an email to me. And fortunately, I did not violate the embargo, but I asked back, like, what is an embargo? Because I only knew that term from like the political sense, and that's how they found out that I was brand new to journalism. But an embargo is when a company or other entity wants to get some news out to the media in preparation for an announcement of some kind, but they don't want that information shared yet. So this episode is coming out on July 28th. If on July 28th, I want the media to know about this change in our business, we're, a new CEO or something like that, I might let them know about that today, but I'm going to say this is embargoed until July 31st, because that's when we're letting our shareholders know, whatever it might be. An embargo is when you want to give the media a heads up about something coming up so they can be prepared to cover it, but you're letting them know we haven't announced this information yet. This is when you're allowed to share that. It can be a useful tool. It can also be a frustrating tool. Do you use embargoes, and when do you use them?
No.
You don't use them at all?
Yeah, no. I'd never use them by choice. I will sometimes get into a little bit of a wrestling match with clients because sometimes I think what can happen is that people think that it makes them sound fancier or more professional, or I am big enough to need an embargo. And really, what you're doing is just telling the media that, like, I'm telling you about this, but you can't tell anybody, and it's a big secret. And I think that it's more frustrating for everybody. So when I've got folks who are really intent on using them, a lot of times for me, what that's saying is that I don't have the flexibility to work with the media the way that I want to work with them, and so we're probably not a great match for each other. I think that they are definitely overused, and I have yet to be in a situation where I'm presented with an argument compelling enough to convince me to be party to one.
Yeah, in my experience, I find them mostly frustrating, and they are generally, like you said, a company that wants to exert more control over their presence in the media than is maybe beneficial to their relationship with that media. It is rare that you would actually need to block the media doing anything for a given amount of time. I guess if you're working with television and you talked about kind of building out those schedules a little bit and you want to give them the heads up, but like, we're making this announcement, but it's unlikely that you're going to have that tight of a turnaround in making that announcement anyway. So If you need to use these, make sure it's because you need to use it for some reason, and use them sparingly. This is not just like fun spy language you get to use. Like, make sure that you are not annoying the media that you want to cover you by putting in rules that aren't actually helping you there.
Yeah, for sure.
So, what is the difference between a press release and a media alert, and when should people use the latter?
So media alerts I basically use for really short event press releases, and that's only after I've sent out that longer outreach. So my client has an event come up. I am going to maybe 8 weeks or 12 weeks out, I'm going to be contacting my folks individually and say, hey, Susan, my client has this event coming up. Here's a quick sentence or two about it. Here's why I think you'd be interested. I'll be sending out more information on it as we get closer. So I've sent out those private, like individual invitations and let them know that it's happening. And then maybe about a month out, I'm going to let people know that an event's coming up, and that's going to be that longer press release that we talk about. I'm probably going to resend that at like that 2 weeks, that 10 days. A media alert, I'm trying to hit that news planning desk that we talked about, that news planning desk that got my email for their like week out, 2 weeks out email address, but now they are morning of and looking at what TV trucks do we have available today, and who can we send out. And so this is going to be a very, very brief recap. And so I'm going to send it like the day of, maybe 2 days in advance, and it's going to have the event date, which is often today, and then the date, on-site contact, which again is generally going to be me or someone else who will answer every single call. So this is where your organized and professional assistants come in great. And then that who, what, where, when, 2 sentences about the event, 2 short, punchy sentences about the event, and that parking info. Then I will usually have so like all of this ideally is fitting on one computer page. Like they shouldn't have to scroll to see any of this information. Then I will usually have like a series of dashes with more about the project or more about the company, or have that like broader press release, have like more information underneath, but I am just giving them at a glance. Oh, right, this event is going on downtown today. We do have a truck available. Let's go ahead and send somebody out. So that is my reminder event that's going out. So that's what those media alerts are going to be.
Yeah, and a reminder for everyone, there will be a blog post that comes out about a week after this episode that will not only include the information we've been talking about of what to include in a press release and how to format it and all that, but we'll actually have visual examples of some press releases so you can kind of see this stuff in action to make it a little bit simpler. Okay, so somebody has sent out a press release to members of the media. What is likely to happen next? If they get a bite on that, what are the next steps? Like, what happens after you've pressed send?
If people respond, sometimes that is a phone call. And again, right, you have to be at a spot to be able to answer that. Your phone should be on. And with media, my own personal rule is that if media has reached out to me, whether that's phone or text or an email, I try to not go more than an hour tops before I am responding to that. And it might not be a comprehensive response, but sometimes it is, hey, I got this email, would love to connect. I will follow back up with you shortly. Like letting them know that this did not just disappear into the ether, but that they have reached another human on the other side who is going to be getting back to them soon is really important. Again, like we talked about with availability, it is the one time in my life that I am actually having my phone out when I am hanging out with people, right? Like I try to be really intentional about being present with people that I'm around, unless I have just sent out a press release, then I'm sorry, I just need to check this text, check this email. Yeah, nope, it's not important, or it's media, so I actually need to respond and engage with that. And people who have been around me long enough are used to that kind of cycle. Those phone calls, those emails, sometimes that's going to be, hey, can we send out a TV crew, or where should we meet you, or tell me a little bit more about this event. And so I make sure that I have all of my details about a particular event for a particular client in one spot so that I can have it ready to go. Especially if you're in the middle of getting ready for an event, you probably have a bunch of things going on at the same time. And so you don't want to be in a spot where you completely blank on the actual date of the event when you're telling somebody information. Or at one point, this event was going to be on a Friday, but then we switched it to a Sunday and I said the wrong word when I was talking. Like, I like to pull up my notes and then engage with somebody. So I've always got that information handy for when I'm doing that. So phone calls, emails, text, oftentimes just being able to interact with that quickly. Sometimes also there isn't a response, right? Like that's the reality of the industry, is that sometimes you are sending this out to a bunch of people and not getting a response. And that doesn't mean necessarily that you've done something wrong, but sometimes an event just isn't right for everyone. Or I guess we didn't talk about timeline on this. Sending out a press release at like the end of the day on a Friday is not a good way to get people interested. So this might have just been hey, the timing that you sent this out on wasn't a great idea. So if I'm sending out like and information that I didn't get this information or finally get the client to approve on it until, Thursday or Friday, I'm usually like resending that on Monday or on Tuesday in the morning so that it's at the top of people's inboxes.
Yeah, on the point of maybe not getting a response, I know as a journalist, I get information about a lot of great products or events or producers of food or beverage that I would love to cover, but I have a finite amount of time. There's a dwindling number of outlets for those stories. And so I might find it interesting, but I can't necessarily pick the story up. Do not be discouraged by the fact that most, or in some cases, all of the media outlets that you send this to don't pick the story up. Don't let that prevent you from continuing to communicate. In the next episode, I'm going to talk all about working specifically with freelance journalists and media members and the way that our stories come together and get assembled. Sometimes I get press releases or other communications that I might be able to use, but I can't use it yet. So I'm holding on to that information, and maybe down the road it will become relevant to me. So don't be discouraged by the fact that you don't get many, or in some cases, any responses to this. And I think it's just important to manage your expectations of what happens, even if you do get media coverage. Understand that when the media picks up your story, they're going to work with you to get information correct and to get quotes accurately and to make sure they understand what it is they're covering, but they're going to write the story, not you. And so the expectations there of what can happen when you send that out need to be something where you understand the nature of that relationship. We're going to talk in a later episode about what to do after you've gotten media coverage. There can sometimes be situations where an outlet gets something wrong, and there can be an appropriate way to deal with that. But having an accurate understanding of the goal is for the media to cover you. That is not the same as you being able to do native content where you're writing your own story and getting that out in front of people. So with everything that we've covered, hopefully we've broken this down in such a way where it is simple for people to follow these steps. So there's going to be the blog post that has simple lists and visual illustrations to explain how to do this. But is there a point at which it is necessary or advantageous for them to hire a PR professional to take care of some of this?
That really depends. I think that sometimes people try to hire PR too quickly, and that can be a problem. So I've had folks want to hire me, but not have an understanding yet of what their company is or what their business is, but they don't want PR around the launch. They want to get the word out about things, but they don't quite have things to get the word out about. And so sometimes some PR folks will work with you on a project to do more brand development, right? Like, do we need to figure out what our company identity is? Like, you got into this and you have a million different directions that you're being pulled in and the things that are really important to you. So how do you prioritize that? Because frankly, and I know that small business owners don't want to hear it, all 22 messages that are really important to you cannot be said at the same volume to everybody at the same time. And for you to expect people to care, like you have to prioritize within those in different seasons. What are the things that you're really looking at? So PR folks can be great for helping you figure out brand identity if that's the actual goal that you have, or if you've got an event coming up and you know that you've got a tight staff and you have the people that you need to make the chocolate, to design the packaging, to actually be there to staff the event, but you don't have somebody available to do the work that we've talked about, to look into what would building this media list look like for you, and who are those important contacts, and how do we write these press releases, and all of that kind of stuff. And you know that because of the nature of your jobs, or sometimes this is your second job or your third job, you don't have the space to be immediately available and responsive for folks. My job is handling media for people and being responsive for people. And so if you're doing like a community block party and getting the word out about your product or your existence of your company in those spaces, like that's probably not going to be something that's worth, frankly, the money and the investment and having to walk somebody through and get them acquainted with your company and all of that stuff. But if you've got something significant that's going on, if you are opening a new location in a completely new area for you, and like you need to connect with the local media in a new area and you don't know those people and you guys don't have the bandwidth to build all of that from the ground up, then connecting with somebody, bringing in someone who knows how to get that stuff started for you can save you a lot of frustration and time. And depending on those PR people, like a lot of times when I'm doing an event for people, I don't need to be your PR person for the next 6 months or for the next like year. Like I can just help you throw one really good event and make sure that I've got a list of media who are familiar with you and your event. And if you're wanting ultimately to be able to take this on, be upfront about that kind of communication, because for me, my goal, I would love for more small businesses that I care about to be able to do this themselves, right? So I am invested in doing exactly this and walking through with people how to be able to take that on yourself. And if that's part of the conversation with a professional, then there are a lot of us out there that are willing to do that. But don't do it too soon before you really know who your company is, unless it's specifically about a brand development. But also, like, you want to make sure that the event or the announcement is going to be substantial enough that it's worth the time, because I don't know your company history, and you are going to have to supply to me the photos that I'm asking for, right? You're going to have to give me the bios that I'm asking for and all of that stuff. So if you don't have the ability to be able to give me that information so that I can package it to give it to media, then you might not be in a spot to be hiring a PR person. And I would hate to see you in a spot where you've signed a contract, you've paid somebody money, but they don't have the tools to be able to do a good job for you.
I've definitely gotten press releases or announcements from PR agencies that are representing a brewery or some other business where I'm reading it and I can tell I know more about their client than they do. Because there are obviously times to hire a press agent, but if you're just doing this and looking at it as basically a temporary employee who can do some of these things for you, you have to train employees. Like you're starting from absolutely nothing in terms of their knowledge of your company, maybe even of your industry that I'm aware of. There are no dedicated craft chocolate press agencies. So, I mean, that you're going to have to spend all of the time you probably would have spent on doing some of this work yourself on just getting that person you've hired familiar enough and comfortable enough to where they can represent you the way that you want them to represent you. Because if you're just going to give them some cursory information and then they're going to send that on your behalf, it's probably not going to do you any favors. It's probably going to be pretty clear that this is pretty surface level information and this person is not going to be able to give me what I need if I want to pick that story up. So there are times to do this, but think long and hard and evaluate what your actual needs are before you take that step. I know that was a ton of information, but again, this will all be going on the blog so you can see it in one place with examples. That post will also include a sample questionnaire Melinda has her new clients fill out with the information she'll need in order to represent them well. So that can help you just to see the kinds of things you might need to think about before you even consider hiring a press agent, which, as we said at the end, is not something you should be doing immediately. There are times to consider it, but you're better off investing most of that time and money into learning how to do these things yourself or training a staff member to do it. One thing I forgot to ask Melinda about on air, but followed up with her on, was what to put in the subject line of emails to media when you're sending press releases. She advises not making these general and vague, so don't do something like press release about upcoming local event, because that's probably not even getting opened. You basically want a shorter version of whatever the headline of the press release itself is. So she gave as examples, booking request, groundbreaking of new West Side housing development, or media alert, free concert and supplies for migrant families. Something that just really quickly and succinctly summarizes what this is and why it's interesting, not even a complete sentence. So to recap the major points from this episode, you don't need to send press releases all the time. These are primarily for when you have news with a specific call to action to get out. A big event, a new product line, a new location, etc. You shouldn't send these to everyone in your media list. Make sure the person you're sending this to actually covers the type of news you're sending them, and add just a bit of personalization to that to indicate you thought that through. Make sure the press release includes all the contact information the media member will need to follow up and the basic factual information they will need about whatever you're announcing. Avoid flowery language, avoid having AI write this for you, avoid industry speak. Keep it simple, but keep it personal. You don't have to be a great writer to do this. You just need to communicate what they need to know. And finally, and critically, be available for their response. You don't want to have wasted your effort by not being available if one of the media members you've sent your press release to calls or emails you. I know you're busy, and yes, this will be inconvenient, but there's no point in sending these at all if you aren't going to be available to see it through. Reminder, you can add us to your media list, and you can ask us any questions you have, and we will address those. I hope this episode has been helpful. I know we're covering a lot of info, but the goal is not to overwhelm you, but to break this down into steps you can actually take. In the next episode, we're going to talk about ongoing relationships with the media and focus specifically on freelance journalists and folks who cover the craft chocolate industry or the food and beverage industry specifically. We'll talk about how stories come together, how you can communicate ideas from your story list, things that don't make sense for a press release, but you still want to get out to a media member who might want to pick up that story for earned media coverage. So we're going to talk all about that stuff. I'll be covering a lot of things from my own experience as a freelance journalist. That'll be coming out in a couple of weeks. Hope you've enjoyed this. Hope it's helpful. Let me know any questions you have. Thanks for listening. Cheers.